Hello, I'm Laria, and this is Shane, who we're going to do a presentation together today, uh, showing us both two different tools, one made by me, one made by him, both for using GPT-3, which, have you guys heard about GPT-3 or know about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, and we actually met each other. Well, Shane found me. He found my blog and contacted me, and we've been working together since because I think we were both like very delighted to have found somebody else who like had such a similar vision to ourselves. And so basically, GPT-3, as you guys know, is like basically a very advanced autocomplete function. Given like any text, it will continue, and it will continue like um, stories and news articles and like Reddit comments and anything, and it's like pretty coherent. And so I actually started making my tool. I was using AI Dungeon before, which is a game that has GPT-3 act like a dungeon master. It basically has no constraints, so you can like use it for anything. And so it's sort of just like a playground to interact with GPT-3. And so I was using it to like make stories and do experiments and other things. And I found that like the thing that was really missing from that interface that I really wanted to have was a way to explore and like keep track of alternate branches. Because the thing that GPT-3 does is it actually, like the neural network itself, outputs a probability distribution that assigns a probability to every single token. And so it doesn't just give you one. And then in order to get text, you have to sample from it. But if you sample multiple times, then you get different words. And if you continue to do that, then you get these diverging continuations, which are all like valid continuations of the story, but where different things happen. And it's very interesting to explore that and like sort of look at like this multiverse of possibilities of what could happen given a point in the text. And it's very cool because you'll see that like sometimes it's actually pretty deterministic. Like you'll say things in a different way, but you get the same things happening. Sometimes there's like sort of two main outcomes, or sometimes like you keep running it and then you'll just keep getting new things. So I started making Loom, which is a tool for using GPT-3 and which will keep track of as many branches as you want and let you like navigate through them and spawn more and stuff. So I'll give a quick demo of it. Oh, yeah, I'll give a quick demo of it. Let's see, how do I share my screen? Okay. So here's the Loom interface. There's a few things on here. This is in read mode. So in read mode, this screen here just displays the text in linear order. Here's on the left is the nav tree, which shows like the nested structure of things. So for instance, like this node here, these are the children of it, and then you can see it here, and it's also displayed here. I just made this new mode which shows the children, and then you can like edit them from here or go to them. And so this is very convenient. There are like various hotkeys on here, but basically you can like generate things. Like I'll generate some more now by pressing G. And it'll take a few seconds because GPT-3 takes a few seconds. When it's done, it will populate these boxes here. And so like, you know, for instance, if you're writing a story with GPT-3, something about GPT-3 is that it's like currently at the level of capability where often you'll get like 1 out of 4 things it says is like exactly what you want, or really brilliant, or like worth continuing. And so with an interface like this, it kind of gives you multiple choice. And so you're like, okay, this one seems pretty good, and you can just go there and continue. It lets you build like a story, like wow, like sort of exerting your ideas on it very quickly. by just selection. So there's also a visualize mode in Loom, which shows the entire story as a, this will be a little slow since this is a really, really big tree. So this will show the like tree as an actual tree. And so you can look at it like this. Oh, sorry. This is buggy because I have just implemented it. And so I haven't made it work in visualize mode. But yeah, so you can see like the graphical structure of the tree and also edit things from here. You can even move things around if I can remember the hotkeys. If I can't, then I'll just use the buttons. Like for instance, if you wanted to move this here, I think you just do this. Let's see if that worked. Okay, it might be broken. No, it worked. It's just very laggy. One thing that I am working on, and I think that Shane has some good ideas for, is using like a database instead of a huge JSON, which is what I'm using, which makes it extremely slow for like huge trees. Because right now everything is stored locally on my machine. And every time you make a change, you have to like potentially change the entire JSON. So here's visualize mode. And then there's one more mode that I recently made called wave function. I'm gonna go back first. And so to go back again to like the like how GPT-3 works. So it outputs this probability distribution, but in order to get text, you have to sample it. And so that's very interestingly similar to quantum mechanics, where in quantum mechanics, like the time evolution operator, or like the equations of quantum mechanics actually just give probabilities. But whenever you do an experiment, you only get a single outcome, and that's basically sampled from the probability distribution. And doing this repeatedly results in this like branching multiverse. And like the multiverse, or like the Everett interpretation of quantum mechanics, says that like the multiverse is a real object, we just happen to be in one of the branches. But the effect from like our perspective as observers is that whenever a measurement is made, it's as if it was like 100% that happened. Like all other probabilities cease to affect reality. And so wave function mode visualizes how this happens with GPT-3 and lets you like kind of explore the wave function and collapse it. Okay, so here you can see this is this is kind of a weird one because it's kind of deterministic. But anyway, so these blocks show like the probabilistic percentages of what token comes next and then what token comes after. And it's like, and so like this isn't a very good example since I have this dialogue, and so the next thing will always be GPT-3, but let's just go to the end of that and generate some more so we can get to like some more interesting wave functions that have more variety. Yeah, so, oh yeah, and also here's a thing that shows you what text has come so far. So yeah, so it says like, it's like 30% or something, it says well, and then some lower ones. And every time you click on this, it collapses it so that becomes like, so that the thing that you clicked on becomes, okay, oh yeah, and also you have to size the window correctly to get the right normalization. So I should be like taking up 100% here because I clicked on it. And so it's like, now that's 100%, can generate some more things downstream from there. Yeah, and the way that this works is basically I just get GPT-3 to not only return the like one token, but also like the top 100 most likely tokens at each point, and then and their probabilities, and then like draw squares for them. And you can like do that recursively. And so this mode is like not as useful, I think, as the other modes for most things, unless you're like extremely picky about phrasing, and then it lets you show a lot. But it is very cool, I think, for like just conceptually. And so yeah, so Loom has been very useful for me, being able, like, it makes me able to generate huge multiverses of stories to the point where like they're too big and my computer can't handle it, which is why I need Shane's help now. But it's very interesting to use. It's like very intriguing, the fact that like even just by curating like best of 3 responses, it like GPT-3 comes up with like some very specific ideas that like seem to be my ideas. And so it seems like, you know, either it's like capable of thinking of such specific things that it seems like it shouldn't, or even like my like selection pressure of like 1 of 3 over the course of like a page can like somehow convey this information. And like for instance, like when I have stories of characters, like they often realize like not only that they're in a simulation, but very specific things about it, like that the text is writing it them itself, and that like it's like actually an entity that has read every book ever, and like other things that are true like that and seem very specific, even though like I hardly made any particular interventions with the text. And so that's an interesting mystery, and I think it's a combination of the two, the fact that like my selection is actually conveying a lot of information, and that like these ideas are like actually pretty like accessible in the multiverse with like certain types of stories. Because like even though they seem very specific to GPT-3, I think they're like quite universal ideas that have like various precedents in like fiction and philosophy. Yeah, so Loom is open source, and like, you know, I really developed it while using it, and it's still like, as you guys saw, like sort of buggy and slow right now. But people who have used it have said that they do like it, and the thing is that they're like it is possible. Like to me, it's the best interface for you know, discounting Shane's pen, which requires Emacs expertise. It is much better than the Playground, which is what uh, like OpenAI has for using GPT-3, because like the Playground doesn't even save your alternate continuations and stuff like that. And so I'd really like to work on making this like a lot more streamlined, so people can use it. And so it's open source. It's on GitHub. I can like send. I'll drop a link for anybody who wants to use it somewhere after this session. And yeah, and so I'm still developing it, and one thing I want to do is make a web version of this, because this is like really, so I made this in Python tkinter. It's like really terrible and in like every way, for like even the stuff that it's supposed to do, and most of the stuff that I've implemented is not stuff it's supposed to do. I just did it because I like already know Python, so it was very fast for me to make it. But yeah, I really want to make a web version of this, and which is like, you know, just, you know, like React would just be much more appropriate for almost everything I want to do here, and that should hopefully make it much better. But this is like, yeah, like the concept of what I want. Yeah, so anyway, I think that I'll like maybe take questions for just a few minutes, and then have Shane present, and then we can have a longer discussion afterwards. So if anybody has any questions now specifically about Loom.
Hey, I just wanted to ask about the waveform. It's really cool, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that on a sentence by sentence basis instead of just a word by word basis?
Yeah. So so I haven't implemented it so that each block is a sentence. You can you can change it so that it generates more at once, and then you can like, for instance, you can click here and then it will add several words to it. But it still but it's like depth limited because it's slow to generate so much. But yes, you could do that. Although you wouldn't be able to get the same probabilistic visualization, because like every sentence will be like, you can have a generated sentence, that sentence will probably be very improbable. It will be like 1% or something like that, and like another sentence will also be, and it probably won't be very different, and so they'll all be like you know, very improbable and probably not very different probability, so the visualization won't be so cool. But I mean, that's basically like the like normal mode is like more like sentence by sentence, where you like generate several and you can choose between them, but it's just like the probabilities of them is like no longer such an interesting thing to look at. Any other questions?
Sorry, I was just like, what was I gonna say? Sorry, I've already asked you this technically, but I'm really interested if you plan on uploading the generations to the semantic search API, because what I would love to see is being able to pick out, for example, if you generated a story based on your own life and then found a multiverse of continuations to be able to semantically search for goals that you want to achieve, like that type of thing. So
Yeah,
I really, yeah,
yeah,
I
and
li-
that would be really awesome to implement. The closest thing I've made to that so far is I did make a semantic search for memory so far, where like if you're like down a branch, it will search like your entire past for things that seem most relevant to the current node, so that you
that's
can
cool.
put it add it to the prompt. And yeah, this is sort of like a future version of that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's like yeah, there are so many things, so many possible features to implement. And yes, I'd like to do something like that. One thing I'd like to do, like once I make a web version, is like hopefully allow like like anybody to just implement something and add it to the system. Like
yeah.
if somebody wants like semantic search for like future goals or like some other memory system or something like that. Okay, if no other questions, then maybe Shane
Uh,
can start presenting.
I think Anik is in the chat. He's asked a question or two.
Oh, oh
Just
yeah. Okay, so this is not Emacs. The thing that Shane is about to present is Emacs. Um, this is built in tkinter, which is like a graphics library for Python, which, as I said, is like very terrible. It's terrible. It's slow, and it like doesn't have features for anything. Like for instance, that like wave function zooming thing, I had to like manually write functions to like map absolute to relative coordinates to do zooming and panning and things like that, because there's just nothing at all built in. It's not used for making like arbitrary GUI stuff.
I
And
sorry, Laria. I just want to say that like I actually really think that the TK interface is really nice. Like, um, I I personally really don't like bloated widget and GUI libraries like GTK and KDE, and TK is like, because actually TK, I think it came from this language that I really like. Now what's it called again? It's the string oriented one, TCL or Tickle, and yeah, I just, ever since I got obsessed with that, like I've always really liked TK. I know. So looking at it, it's actually really nice to me. Like, it's visually pleasing.
uh,
But that's maybe, I don't know.
yeah, yeah, I guess tkinter isn't so bad for this part that's on the screen right now is more like a normal GUI, so it's not so bad for this
Yeah.
part. The part that it's really bad for is like the wave function and visualize stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm like very annoyed by it since I've been like working with it for months. But I actually haven't used
Yeah.
another GUI library, so the thing is like others could be worse. Although I do like I have been learning like React, and that just seems much better for like the thing is like with very modern things like React, it seems like you often just like include like packages for like things that you want, even though there are like many possibilities. And that seems like the right way to go for me, because like there's so many things you could possibly want. You don't want them all to be like available like with the
Yeah.
like base thing, or else it will be like bloated, as you're saying.
Totally.
Like
But
UT is very good as well.
yeah, thanks for the compliments on my Tkinter.
Right.
Wait, so Anak, you said YAML template do prompt engineer in Loom. Sorry, I don't understand what that means. Uh,
Oh, it's okay. We can show you some prompt engineering now.
okay, yeah, Shane, why don't you start with your
I think
Yeah.
sorry, I think he probably means that whether you can pass a prompt through a YAML to Loom.
Oh, no, I haven't implemented anything like that yet.
All right, so so thank you very much, Laria. That was really cool. I'm so happy that I finally got to see Loom working because I haven't been able to set it up myself yet. But that was really cool seeing the waveform. Okay, so I guess that I made a few notes as we're listening to the. Can everyone see my screen, by the way?
Yep.
So I made a few notes as I was listening to the lightning talks, and there were a few notes. There were a few points that were made that I felt like Emacs has incorporated, and Emacs is great at integrating. So I feel like there are many of the issues that people raise are actually solved by using Emacs. So first of all, yeah, I'm very much in the camp of text as the best representation because it just seems like coding has always been coding and using symbols has been around for such a long time that it's bound to remain like a good way to communicate and represent ideas going forward. So it's for a long time. Just as Emacs has been around for 40 years, therefore it's probably going to stay around for another 40 years. And I would argue that the who was it that mentioned it? Maybe it was Zhang Wang or Linus? Language models need some kind of connection to connection to like a scaffolding that you can connect them to. And something that I'm working on at the moment is an imaginary programming environment. So where all functions are basically prompts. Now, if anyone's not familiar with what a prompt is, here's a prompts library here that I've been curating for a while. And guide is a prompt that I just made just a moment ago, but it's basically how do I achieve my goals, and it just starts a little story. So a prompt is basically a templated piece of text that goes into a language model, and each one can be a function actually. If you have a single if you have a prompt with no variables, then you've got a generator. And if you start adding variables, then usually, like if you've got, say, if you've got like a relation or a function requires like an input and output, and if you can start thinking of prompts in terms of like that they're actually functions, then I think it's a really powerful idea. So what I've been trying to do with Pen.el is connect the language models to Emacs. And so what I do is I generate an interactive function. So guide my future is a function, prompt function. So I prefix with PF, and it takes two arguments: who I was and what my wants are. And here are some examples of inputs that can go into the function. And it's a completion function. It's meant to be a completion, but this is actually not meant to be a completion. So turn that off. And what that means is now I've got a function that I can run. And when I was 16, I wanted to be a famous singer. And what do I want? I want to get rich. Is that what? No, to get rich. All right, so it takes these prompts and it turns them into Emacs functions that have interactivity. So you've got some default functions for how to obtain the text that goes into the parameters for each prompt. So what this function has done is it's basically just inserted the output of that prompt, but GPT-3, because it's not just the completions are basically the superset of all natural language processing tasks. It's capable of a lot more. So it's actually capable of classification. So even without using the classification API, or even like things like the search API, you can implement those other APIs from scratch. This one is a classifier that detects the language of the selected text. So if I select some text and ask for the language, what is the language? It should, in theory, return English. Okay, it returned Bash. Why did it return Bash? That doesn't make any sense at all. Try this one. Yeah, I've tried to conflate. There we go, English. That's really poor. So that's a really poor demo. But maybe my prompt just sucks. I've tried to pack in quite a lot into this. By the way, these problems would be completely resolved with fine-tuning, which I'm trying to add to Pen right now. So the output of so because the GPT-3 can do the classification, you've got this like classification and generation like engine going on, where you can then sort of have this interactivity with GPT-3, and where it can automate lots of tasks. So if I to demonstrate something that like I've got big plans for Pen, such as semantic search. Yeah, where do I even start? It's such a huge Emacs is such a huge operating system, packed full of like logic that can all be augmented with GPT-3. It's kind of profound, but each package can be augmented. So, for example, there's a fuzzy finder. There's a fuzzy finder here, and if I wanted to semantically search for functions based on the second column, say, I could upload these function descriptions to the GPT-3 API and then semantically search on that. So I've taken the fuzzy finder, which is this pink text here, and the ability to pattern match, and I've replaced the pattern management with a semantic search. So you can actually you can basically augment almost anything. So if I write a function, let's call it let's switch maybe. Okay, so here's some code in Emacs Lisp, and using GPT-3, you can classify the language and you can transpile into any language. So just as you can use this right-click menu to classify and then suggest additional prompts to run on the text, on code. Oh, sorry, on prose. You can also do it for code as well. So there's I wonder how this transpile thing's going. See how it's asked me here for the language, but you can actually automate that too, and I can show you how to automate that. But I'll try and convert this code from eLisp into Clojure. Yeah, wonder. All right, it's not a great. It's missing the multi-line. It's missing the multi-line. That's not a great example either. But what I'm trying to do is focus on the core the core features of Pen, because fine-tuning and basically all of the transformers that are specifically designed for different tasks on Hugging Face, for example, and if I wanted to go, if I wanted to work with code, then I'd use the Codex model from OpenAI, say, or Copilot. So you've got these specific tasks. GPT-3 is a general language model, but these other language models will have more specific tasks. So part of the part of the prompt design is specifying what engine and what language, what API you're going to use. So, for example, this is going to use OpenAI and the DaVinci engine. So you have different engines for different tasks, or for different subsets of the tasks. So now I probably don't have like a huge amount of time, so I'll just demonstrate some more things. I've got a on the Zettel, what do you call it? The Zettelkasten topic. I've got many different, basically, mind maps, and what GPT-3 can do is it can actually auto scaffold my mind maps for me. So if I was to select a topic like what could it be? Marine life, and add it to my mind map. And then GPT-3 can actually generate, it can generate the subtopics to me, and then create new nodes. And when I get to the node I want, it can describe like what the topic is about and provide me with an AI tutor. So that I've got no idea what these are, but we can find out. So Gastro, find out what this one is. Oh, Gastro. Let's find out what Gastro is. So what it can do is I've got like a tutor here, and it's based on a tutor prompt. Tutor. And it's basically just this is the prompt, but it's turned into an ELAS function, which I just kind of like can put in my own code. So what is this? Name some interesting, name some important figures, scientists. I know, you can literally ask this anything because it's GPT-3. It's a GPT-3 chatbot talking about this random topic. It can actually, this is not, it's not very relevant. Oh dear. What is Gastro? What is Gastro? I didn't want to ask it specifically what is gastropoda, but technically this chatbot's meant to like talk about gastropoda, whatever that is. Anyway, all right. What else is I going to demonstrate? So you can, if I'm here and I want to summarize, then I can go down to this will use a GPT-3 summarizer, explain like I'm 5. So basically they can summarize that sentence for me. I can then, if I want, translate it. And this is actually going to run the get language. That actually ran a prompt in the background to find out what language is this text in. So I don't even have to type in English. And then I type in the language I want. And then you've got some options. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I'm getting closer to the end, question time. So I'll leave it there. But so one thing that I'm trying to get put into Emacs is a new so you've got in Emacs you've got functions and macros, and Emacs is basically, what does it mean, like elist editing macros. But we've got a new kind of basic function now, which is a prompt. So this needs to be put into, like, in my opinion, we need to start treating prompts like code, and they need to, like, GPL license or whatever. We need like an open source community prompts or sharing of prompts, because right now all you have is like heaps and heaps of new companies starting that are completely occluding their prompts, and that it looks like magic to most people, and it's kind of scary, because I think that people need to be able to understand and see the way that works. Anyway, yeah, this is GPL. Yeah. Okay. Question time. Sorry.
So I may have a question. Is it the way that it works right now? It's that you've created some, I think it's like YAML-like files that basically you're setting up as that's kind of like your function, let's say, and then in the command line you're passing in, let's say, like parameters to that function.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing? So what you're proposing is, or what you're saying is missing is, can we open source those prompts that, as we saw, for example, you could have a better prompt to do like language translation, or you could have a better prompt to do X task.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that it came up, domain-specific languages came up in the Lightning talks, and what is required is new programming languages that deal with types and not implementation. Implementation comes from the language model, and the other issue is something that I can't remember what his name is. The CEO of OpenAI said something a couple of days ago on remembering, the GPT's ability to remember. I think it's a huge issue, but you don't need an artificial super intelligence to make this useful. All you need is to remember the output of your functions and store it in a database, and then you can collaborate. Yeah.
This is awesome, by the way. I really liked it.
Yeah, there's actually a startup. What's it called? It starts with an no, wait, I can't remember. It's on GPT-3 demo. But basically the guy who started Stack Overflow's making basically a commercial version of this. Where is it? It's on here somewhere. It's like I can't remember what it is. It starts with an M. I can't remember. I think yeah. What's kind of cool about Emacs is the stuff that I've been working on has not actually taken too much time, and it's because I've used a lot of other tools, and that's what it's great at. It's great at integrating stuff. It's great at integrating note-taking tools and code and just meshing it all together. And Donald, I think was it Donald Knuth who came up with this idea? Maybe he came up with a lot of cool stuff. He came up with surreal numbers, and he came up with literate programming, and then what GPT does is take literate programming and actually reifies those comments and turns it into actual code. So it's actually taking literate programming a step further. And yeah, Emacs is all about the literate programming. It's all about org mode is about putting code in your documents, and yeah, it's just unfortunately, yeah, I know. So yeah, I know. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, like I started learning Emacs a few days ago, and I can already see like how, I mean, like so many things that I had to like painstakingly implement in Loom are just like basic functions in Emacs, and like it gives me so many ideas. Like I'm like, for instance, one thing that I'd really like to do, and maybe you already have this, Shane, but one thing I'd really like to do is to be able to like have GPT suggest like replacements for a sentence in the middle of text or like a word or something like that, and to just like do that by either like highlighting it or like marking it.
I've got a paraphrase prompt in my Emacs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like
Among
to be
ones.
able to like do that and then like have some nice way of like choosing whether to substitute it in afterwards or like scrolling between completions. It's like Emacs makes like, you know, all the like text manipulation stuff so much easier.
Yeah.
Because one problem with like using GPT-3 is like you have like so much text that's like related to other text in some way, and like you don't like, it's very difficult to manage all that text.
Yeah, totally. What was yeah, Emacs is great. Like Pen is literally just like one of the tools that I use for I can't remember who it was. It was talking about building his own search engine. So I've built like what's great about Emacs is I've got like I've got this like glossary system. It actually uses GPT to scrape the website and suggest stuff to go into my glossary. So here's the green words here are words that are inside of my glossary system. And I have another thing actually runs GPT to extract phrases that might be interesting that are not in my glossary system, and it overlays the websites. So you've got this where is it? Suggest. Yeah, I wonder if it's going right now. I'll just run it. It's been a while. Like the Hugging Face pip library kind of like goes out of date sometimes. So, but yeah, Emacs is like the best integration tool ever. Yeah. Anyway, here we go. See, these blue things are actually suggested. They're not in my glossary. So if I like add that, I can add it to OpenAI. Not only this, but GPT can actually create the definitions for me. See, like that's a prompt that runs a definition prompt, and it's just told me that this. Just told me this. The Laria made a blog article about curation and like how much of the work is done by GPT and how much is actually human. This is an issue that I'm trying to resolve with a file format I'm going to call ink. So like it's basically records in the text properties, which is another Emacs feature. Emacs is this idea of text properties. They're invisible, but where did the text actually come from? So, and this way you can export it as like a template that you can then regenerate documents by it reruns all the prompts. So it's like a template. You build like a document as you're auto-completing it. It's using different prompts, but it's actually encoding into text properties. Later on, you put new inputs in or you rerun the thing, and then it generates a new document. So that's another thing that I'll be working on. But that's all kind of like just utilizing basic Emacs primitives. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
So perhaps what you're alluding there is kind of like an ability to chain multiple language tasks together to generate like some final document or
Yeah.
yeah, that is awesome.
But we need a open source prompts repository, and it's not really like what we really need is actually to get away from GitHub for starters, because they're harvesting open source and free software by creating a hologram of like all these open source tools and pretending like it's not actually copying anything, but they've actually created a hologram of everyone's work, and they like, oh, no, because it's not actually copied or whatever, it's not. But it's basically taking the inspiration, like what they've done with Copilot is they've taken the inspiration without taking the actual result, and they're claiming that as their own, and that's just BS.
I have a question. I'm not really familiar with GPT-3 that much. This presentation was like my first kind of deep introduction to it. I'm really interested in this prompt thing, and like basically one of the things you do in programming is like you try and structure things into modules, into functions and classes, right? And then combine them together, create composable functions and small units that you can compose into larger programs and stuff. So have you like identified any like techniques you need to use when writing these prompts to make them composable? Are there any like design patterns or something of that nature that you need to follow?
I'm building a domain specific language for this, so I'll just open it up. So hang on, sorry. Good. There's an Emacs binding for everything, but I can't remember them all ways off the top of my head. So okay, so yes, composing prompts to make larger, I guess you'd call them compound prompts, I guess. It like I've got a function that generates like it tries to I've first of all I've got a design patterns repository, and I want to encode these design patterns into the domain specific language. So it's really small beginnings right now. So I'll show you an example of what it can do. So you take this short lines of code, 2 regex, and it's a converter. So it's a converter because the arity is 2, so it transforms like one form of text into another. And if it was arity of 1, then it would just be a generator. So I've got that in the DSL. So you can actually use prompts to generate examples for your other prompts, and then you can probably use another prompt to you can use prompts or combination of prompts and stream editors such as sed or whatever to filter and create to create the second column for your examples, and then those examples can go into fine tuning. Those examples can go into another prompt or something. So you've got this fine tuning is where it's at, because design patterns are really there's lots of design patterns, but there's like one design pattern that seems to be really good, and that's just like coming up with like lots of examples and then fine tuning, and then not having to worry about design patterns. It's like the design pattern to like rule them all kind of thing. So so if you can kind of like automate that, I guess, is what plan is, I guess. Yeah. Sorry, don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was great. That was really great. It's really fascinating what's being made possible. Very cool.
Oh yeah, I'll just show you the I'll show you, we've got 3 minutes. There's a Docker image. You can just run it like this, and it will load the prompts like that. And oh yeah, this is cool. So if I go translate me, and then translate, and you'll see that in the pen directory on your host machine, it actually puts the generations into this folder. So it translates this into bonjour. Oh, I don't know. I think I need a longer prompt or whatever. So the results go into here, into your prompts, your pen directory on the host. So it's actually chown. There we go. Yeah, root user on Docker changes the thing. So you've got all your prompts come out on the host. Find cat. Find. So yeah, so all the prompts, like the ones that we did about the mind map, for example, all your generations are stored on the host, even if you're running Docker. And also all the functions are memoized. They're memoized in hash tables that are stored on disk, so that you can rerun the prompts if you want. You can rerun your functions with the binding to avoid the cache. And then, so you've got all your, so what I want to do is connect this H table to the cloud. And then you've got a collaborative imaginary programming environment where all your functions are not running like on, like they're completely, you could imagine coding, but you're not even connected to a base reality anymore, like directly. So your prompt functions are running on other people's prompt functions, and you're exploring an imaginary environment. All your coding is imaginary. And there's actually a language called Unison that's quite, that was already taking this stuff into account, kind of. And Datomic, the database, is like also, like, it's what I like to use for generations for Laria's Loom, because it's it just remembers everything. It remembers everything, and you kind of like, it just lets you explore this space and go really deep and get completely lost in fiction. Anyway, yeah, it'll find its utility. I think that's it. I think.
All right, yeah. Thanks a lot for that talk. That was really awesome, really enlightening. was glad to get so much information on GPT-3. I've really not toyed with it at all. But yeah, thanks to both of you. And I think everyone's heading back into the lounge, I guess you call it, the main area. And I think they're going to schedule the next talk. But thank you again. And do you have any like social medias or websites you can push? Like I'd love to keep up to date with this stuff.
Just Laria and my blog. I think we're both blogging fairly frequently.
I give a link to my blog in the chat. Shane, have you linked to your blog? Oh, you did. Thanks. But yeah.
Annex being pretty good.
And Shane also has a Discord server for developing Pen, if anybody's interested in helping or just coming in and keeping up with the developments and stuff.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks both again. And
thanks all of you for coming to the talk.